Here is a question that sounds simple but will completely change how you see your own life. If you got just 1% better every single day, and someone else got just 1% worse every single day, how different do you think your lives would be after 1 year? Most people guess a little different. Maybe somewhat ahead. The actual answer is so extreme that when mathematicians and behavioral scientists first calculated it, it became one of the most quoted statistics in modern self-improvement. And once you understand why it works this way, you will never look at your daily habits the same way again. Here's the math, and I want you to really sit with this. If you improve by just 1% every day for a year, you don't end up 365% better. You end up over 37 times better. 37. Not because the math is some trick, because improvement compounds. Each day's gain builds on top of the previous day's gain, not just adding to it but multiplying it. And here's the part that should genuinely concern you, the same compounding works in reverse. Decline by just 1% a day, and within a year, you're not down 365%, you're down to nearly nothing. 3% of where you started. The exact same principle that builds extraordinary results also explains why doing nothing, or worse, doing slightly worse each day, quietly erodes everything. Here's the exact moment this principle fails for most people, and it's not a lack of motivation. It's a misunderstanding of what 1% actually feels like in real time. 1% better today looks like almost nothing. You read 10 pages instead of 0. You walk for 15 minutes instead of skipping it. You write one paragraph instead of staring at a blank page. In the moment, it feels embarrassingly small, almost not worth doing. And so most people quit right there, convinced that something this small couldn't possibly matter. But the entire power of this rule depends on doing the small thing anyway, especially when it feels pointless. Because the results of 1% are invisible for a long time, and then suddenly, they are not. There's a concept that explains this perfectly, and it comes from simple physics. Ice doesn't gradually become water. It sits at 31 degrees, completely solid, seemingly unchanged, and then at exactly 32 degrees, it shifts entirely. All the energy you put in below 32 degrees looks like it accomplished nothing. But it didn't accomplish nothing. It built the exact conditions required for the one final degree to trigger total transformation. This is what 1% improvement looks like in real life. Months of effort that seem to produce no visible result, and then, seemingly overnight, a breakthrough that looks sudden to everyone watching but was actually the result of every single invisible degree that came before it. This principle isn't just a motivational saying, it has a well-documented real-world origin. In the early 2000s, the British professional cycling team was, frankly, mediocre. Decades without a Tour de France win. Then a new coach took over with a strategy called the aggregation of marginal gains, improving everything by just 1%. Better pillows for sleep quality. Hand-washing techniques to avoid illness. Slightly more comfortable bike seats. Tiny aerodynamic tweaks. Individually, every single change was almost laughably small. Together, compounded across an entire team and an entire season, the results were not small at all. Within a few years, that same team dominated Olympic cycling and won multiple Tours de France. Nothing they changed was dramatic. Everything they changed was compounding. Here's the trap almost everyone falls into, usually every January 1st. Instead of choosing 1%, people choose 50%. New gym routine, new diet, new sleep schedule, new morning routine, a new language, meditation, journaling, all starting on the exact same Monday. It feels productive. It feels like serious commitment. And it almost always collapses within 2 weeks, because no human willpower system can sustain that much simultaneous change. The 1% rule isn't a smaller version of transformation. It's the only version that actually survives contact with real life, because it asks so little on any single day that there's no reasonable excuse not to do it, even on your worst day. So what does 1% actually look like, practically, in a normal day. It is almost insultingly small. 1 page of a book, not a chapter. 1 push-up, not a workout. 1 sentence in a journal, not a full entry. 1 extra glass of water. $1 moved into savings. 1 kind message sent to someone you care about. None of these take more than 2 minutes. And that is the entire design. A habit that takes 2 minutes has almost no barrier to entry. You can do it exhausted, busy, unmotivated, or in a bad mood, and that consistency, that unbroken chain of small actions, is worth infinitely more than an occasional burst of intense effort followed by weeks of nothing. Here is the part of this principle that most people completely miss, and it matters more than the math. Every time you do your 1%, you are not really doing it for the push-up, or the page, or the dollar. You are casting a small vote for the identity of the person you are becoming. Someone who shows up. Someone who keeps a promise to themselves. Someone who doesn't need motivation to act, because action has become who they are, not something they have to convince themselves to do. Over a year of these votes, you don't just end up with 37 times the output. You end up being a fundamentally different person than the one who started, and that shift in identity is often more valuable than whatever the habit produced. Here's the warning side of this principle that deserves equal attention. Just as no single day of improvement feels significant, no single day of decline feels dangerous either. Skipping the workout once feels harmless. Scrolling instead of reading feels harmless. Eating poorly for 1 day feels harmless. And it is harmless, as an isolated event. The danger was never any single day. The danger is the compounding pattern that forms when slightly worse becomes the default, day after day, without ever feeling like a crisis large enough to interrupt. Most people don't decline because of 1 bad decision. They decline because of 365 slightly worse decisions that each felt too small to matter. Here is exactly how to start this today, in under 2 minutes. Step 1. Pick just 1 area of your life, not 5, just 1. Health, money, relationships, work, whatever matters most to you right now. Step 2. Choose an action so small it feels almost embarrassing to count. Not exercise more, 1 push-up. Not save money, $1. Not read more, 1 page. If it doesn't feel almost too easy, it's still too big. Step 3. Do it today. Then do it tomorrow. The goal for the first month isn't improvement, it's simply not breaking the chain. The compounding doesn't care how small the deposit is. It only cares that you never stopped making it. A year from today, you will have lived 365 more days regardless of what you choose. The only real question is which direction those days compound. 1% better, and you become someone 37 times more capable than where you started, not because of 1 dramatic decision, but because of 365 small ones nobody else even noticed you were making. 1% worse, and you quietly drift to nearly nothing, 1 invisible day at a time. The choice in front of you was never large. It was never going to require a complete life overhaul or extraordinary willpower. It just required showing up, embarrassingly small, every single day. So, what's your 1% going to be? Tell me in the comments, and come back in a year and tell me what it became.